Now, let's look at examples in research just to bring this to the real world that we are involved in. We can use abstract thinking in many ways. I bring here 5 areas, but this is not meant to be an exhaustive list of areas where we can use abstract thinking. We can use abstract thinking for concept abstractions. And it can be simple things like you've got a statement from a paper here, and we need to analyze it for our literature review. And we have 2 pieces of information: inadequately managed scenes and 2 areas: poor evidence and risk of wrongful convictions. And we want to make sense of these 2 pieces of information by looking at the link between them, labeling the link between them. And to do that, we need to use abstract thinking. So what is the relationship between the 2 bits of information here? And actually, one label, when we do analysis, there's no single answer, but one label that we can use is consequences. So poor evidence and risk of wrongful convictions are consequences of inadequately managed crime scenes. This is from the crime scene investigation paper. So even in this bit of exercise, we can use abstract thinking. So this is part of something I call the structured approach to literature analysis, SALA, which is kind of a structured way that I've developed to analyze the literature. And I've got several videos about it in the YouTube channel if you want to go and have a look at it, or recommend to your students to go to the channel and watch these videos. We can do it in terms of data analysis. So this is from a paper that I co-authored, and this is about circulation management at exhibitions. And how did we arrive at all these factors? So let's look at the example of cost. So we had 2 bits of information from interviews, and you can read them yourselves, but we needed to use abstract thinking to identify the theme. And the theme, as we interpreted it, was cost. Now we ended up with these 20 or 15, I can't remember the number, factors, and long lists of things are never good. We need to analyze them, i.e. find themes, divide them across categories. And when we did that, we actually categorized cost as an organizational factor. And to go from the actual answer of the participant to then the intermediate theme cost and to organizational factors, the top theme, we had to use abstract thinking. So if we go back to what we already covered in terms of the construals theory, we can actually identify a hierarchy of abstract thinking where we have the concrete and tangible. In the previous example, it was the cost element. We have, so let me just click again. We have the intermediate level, which are organizational factors, and actually we have a higher level denomination concept, which is factors influencing the techniques that exhibition managers use to manage the circulation in an exhibition. So we went from the participant statements to cost to organizational factors to factors influencing by using abstract thinking skills. We can look at context abstraction. Let's look at this example. The title is an examination of the personal selling techniques employed by, this is a festival actually around Bournemouth, where I am, and they use ambassadors to sell tickets. Basically, they say, if you sell 10 tickets, you get your ticket for free. And then people challenge themselves to sell 10 tickets to friends, friends of friends, and so on. Now, if we use abstract thinking, actually, this study is not about festival ambassadors. It's about amateur salespeople. because these people are not professional salespeople. They are literally trying to sell something that is in a different context, that is different from the other types of salespeople. And then this is complemented with a table like this, where it defines the types of salespeople. You've got amateur, semi-professional, and professional salespeople. And you compare these three types of salespeople across a number of dimensions, which are in themselves abstract. And what you end up with is with a profile of each type of salespeople. And that allows us to do one thing, to demonstrate that the type of salespeople we are dealing with is different from the other types of salespeople that research has focused on. You can see in blue, you can see the differences, the dimensions where more clear differences between amateur salespeople and the other two types of salespeople can be seen. So this shows very high level abstract thinking, not only in terms of identifying that actually that specific type of ambassador is an amateur salespeople, but also in terms of demonstrating that that type of salespeople, amateur salespeople, has different abstract characteristics than the other two types of salespeople, which is where most research on selling techniques has focused on. I would say all research on selling techniques. So this links to two types of sitting context in research, which is opportunity context. And there's another one, which is suitable context. And as you can see on the right-hand side, when you want to explain the role of context in your research, you require abstract thinking, because you need to highlight the abstract features of the context that you're dealing with a view to explain how it provides an opportunity in opportunity context, or how it provides a suitable context for your research. And then we can use abstract thinking to create abstract profiles. For example, person profiles. Here you have 6 profiles based on risk and security perceptions: the overthinker, investigator, naive, ignorer, survivalist, and optimizer. And then the characteristics, the abstract characteristics of each of them. You can do it for social practices. So here it's not about profiling people, but profiling social practices, what we call practice-based segments. We've got 4 segments: private, tribal, sociable, and communing. And then you've got the characteristics along certain dimensions that then are used to profile each practice-based segment. We can even use it to profile research practices. So in this instance, it's about comparing 2 types of segmentation: traditional segmentation and practice level segmentation. And we can do it along a number of characteristics of dimensions to illustrate the abstract differences between the 2 types of research practices. We can use abstract thinking for relational abstractions. This is from my PhD. It's the conceptual framework from my PhD. I was looking at the concept called innovation interdependence. And this allowed me then to make claims about the relationship between the various concepts in my conceptual framework. And again, I had to use abstract thinking, not only to design my conceptual framework, but then to draw conclusions about the relationship between the various elements in that conceptual framework. And we can also use abstract thinking for process abstractions. So we've got an example here where we've got a 3-stage process. This is about how to gain and maintain trust in client-vendor relationships. And there are 3 stages: winning trust, building trust, and maintaining trust. And then you've got the characteristics of each, what happens at each level, and then there are feedback mechanisms and some broader influences such as industry pressures. So when this is from a student of mine, and actually an undergraduate student of mine, when the student created this framework, she used high-level abstract thinking skills. So we can see that we can use abstract thinking skills in a variety of contexts in our practice as researchers. And these are just examples, just to highlight it again. There are so many other ways that we can employ abstract thinking skills in research. For example, when you do literature review, when you design your questionnaire, your conceptual framework, basically abstract thinking skills, as I said, are employed throughout the research process.